Good day, everyone. This is Conversations with Cutty, and today I have a very special guest, Dr. Charles Steele, who's a civil rights leader, politician, businessman, and president and CEO of the SCLC. And in case you're not up on your acronyms, Southern Christian Leadership Conference. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing great, sir. Doing great.
Yes, yes. I want to get into a lot of things today about the Wisconsin trip, but first I want to start by saying uh, my condolences because we lost three great civil rights superheroes this year in
That's
C.T.
correct.
Vivian, Dr. Joseph Lowery, and Congressman John Lewis, and I'm sure that all of them were your friends.
Yeah, all three were my friends. I worked close with all three of them. Dr. Joseph Lowery actually uh, taught me everything I know in terms of civil rights, along with another young man who made his transition several years ago, Reverend John Nettles. But it was Dr. Joseph Lowery who endorsed me over the years and ultimately endorsed me for being president CEO of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC. And I'm going on roughly my 14th year. That's a long time.
That
Being
is.
yes, and being on a seat like this. So I got a lot of wisdom. And also CT Vivian, my good friend who made his transition. Reverend Dr. CT Vivian was at one point for a year president because I took a sabbatical.
Mhm.
I took a sabbatical for 3 years after I resigned from my state Senate seat. Excuse me, in Alabama, I was a state senator for 10 years and a city councilman for 8 years. So you're talking about a totally 18 years being elected and a civil rights worker. So I've been in this business as an adult for 45 years.
Wow.
It's been great. Congressman John Lewis from Alabama, Troy, Alabama. I'm from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So I've been in the movement ever since my teenage years, and I just thank God for it.
Yes, sir. Do you see, like you said, you've been in for 45 years. Do you see a difference now in the involvement of our youth as different as it was back when you were getting involved in your teenage years?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a great question. What happened back many years ago, which is not that far? People look at like it's the Civil War or something. Even the Civil War is not that far away once you realize the impactfulness that it had, as well as the civil rights movement, because we just a moment away from going back to all of those days.
Oh my God, we are.
Because we don't understand the historicity from which we have come. And we have come a long ways on a short period of time from the transatlantic African slave trade. But this is the big difference. One of the problems with people of color, African Americans, and fair-minded thinking people of all ethnicity and background is collaboration.
Exactly.
We don't collaborate. Even in civil rights, it's like competition. We shouldn't have that. We should have collaboration. Within the movement of SCLC, it's competition.
Mhm.
Within the movement of NAACP, internally, it's competition, and on and on and on from the traditional sense. But collaboration is being missed. And it's missing from the movement, from the family, from our community. But let me close out with this. What we are missing in terms of today's movement is that everybody think they can lead a march. You know, we up and get upset, I'm a march.
Mhm.
Dr. King had 6 principles, and I'm gonna educate the folks on that today.
All right.
6 principles, and this can save America, it can save your church, save your marriage, save any organization, save the universe. Number 1, gather information.
Mhm.
Facts finding. I deal with facts.
Yes.
Know the percentages of what's taking place. I'm gonna give you one percentage that most folks don't even think about. African Americans only get 3% of bank loans.
Mm.
How in the world can we make it in a capitalistic society and we don't have no capital? Number 2, after you gather information, get the facts. Number 2, you educate the public.
Mhm.
on the facts. You have to have the facts. Number 3, you make a personal commitment. A personal commitment from yourself, even with the ultimate sacrifice of getting involved, non-violently getting involved, but you're willing to give your life. Number 4, you have to know how to negotiate. I have not been the president of SCLC for these numbers of years, 13, 14 years, and not knowing how to communicate, negotiate, and bring about the closing of a deal, because it is a civil rights business.
Right, with any.
Not only is it a movement. I thought you wanted to ask me something.
No, I said with anyone. I was just adding on, like you were able to negotiate with anybody.
That's right. That's right. It's a business.
Yes.
That's that's number 4. You have to know how to negotiate. Number 5. Okay, here I go. Number 5 is direct action. We make it number 5, number 1.
Oh, wow.
Hello. You see my point?
I see your point. I got you.
You don't protest and go into a direct action without being trained. Being trained on the facts. And we ain't talking about no training for no semester or no year. We talking about in a matter of hours. Usually 24, 48 hours, you can get all the facts, all of the steps. Direct action is number 5. So why is it number 5? You bringing out your best product in protest as number 1. You don't have nothing to sit on to say, if you don't provide these opportunities for my people and for us in the fairness and the citizenry of what we represent, then we're going to have a massive march upon you.
Right.
Do you know how long it took to get Dr. King and A. Philip Randolph and the other of the big 4, the big 6, to bring about the 1963 March on Washington? A. Philip Randolph tried to have it in the 40s, and talking to FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and telling him about the facts of this country is wrong for racism and economic development, deprivation, and these type of things. Look how long it took to have a march that impacted the 1965 Voter Rights Act and the 1964 Public Accommodation Civil Rights Act. Look how long it took. We want to do it in a matter of a few minutes.
Right.
And you're doing it destructively. Now, not criticizing. I'm saying we need to do this, but do it structurally and non-violently. I don't condone no violence, no setting nothing on fire, no hidden agendas. You have to have marshals that are trained. That's how we save not only our issues and our organizations and our concerns that we're fighting for, but you save the family. You know, you don't fight fire with fire. You have to be non-violent. Now, the last one, number 6. All I'm saying is that it's a science to this. You don't just march. You have to orchestrate the march. You have to plan the march. And you don't let folks get in your march that shouldn't be in the march. Dr. King, listen to me, then I'm gonna tell you number 6.
Okay.
Dr. King died because of the infiltration of a gang called the Invaders in Memphis, Tennessee. Okay? They were staying there at the hotel, and the government conspired to kill Dr. King. People afraid to talk about that. The Memphis police and the government was together. How did they get Dr. King? Because he was frustrated on that first march with the sanitation workers when he was in Memphis. He was frustrated because the invaders had infiltrated the march and turned it to be violent. And he was very disturbed over that. And Dr. King said to himself, sometimes you have to talk to yourself and to them dry bones. You know, you have to talk to it.
Yeah, exactly.
When it's low point in your life, you got to talk to it. Even though it doesn't talk back, like give to a situation that you don't receive nothing. And he talked to himself and said, I know I can lead a nonviolent march in Memphis, Tennessee. So they infiltrated to get him back so they could set up, so they could set him up so they could get the right shot. So that's what violence will bring about, ultimately always destruction and death.
Yeah.
Number 6, you always reconcile. Always reconcile. Reconsider. Bring the glue to the community and bringing folks together. You reconcile at the end. It is a plan. You don't just get in and start marching without understanding those 6 steps. That's what we are missing. We are missing the old songs. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I was in a couple marches just a few weeks ago, a couple months ago. We don't sing no old songs no more. I'm just listening. I'm here leading the march. We don't sing no, we got our own songs. Oh my Lord. You got your own song, then that means you're gonna eliminate God. Hello? You got to obey God. This is a Southern Christian Leadership Conference history of success. We couldn't have done it without God.
Right, and it's spiritual.
In the spiritual. There you go. There you go. And I'm afraid. I heard one commentator say that we don't need God no more.
Oh, wow.
We don't need to kneel and pray no more. We don't need to pray no more.
Well,
take it for your own.
Yeah, I can't subscribe to that.
You taking it for yourself, and you acting like you woke yourself up this morning. It was God that woke you up.
Amen.
And if you think your alarm clock did it, take your alarm clock to the cemetery and set it off. See how many folks gonna get up.
Exactly.
Not your alarm clock. It was God.
Yes. Yes.
That's what we are missing.
Yes.
And I'm here to say the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. That's what got us through slavery, Jim Crow, and today. But we have lost 50 years. The 1965 Voter Rights Act that we all fought for, got blooded for, and lynched, and castrated, and ostracized. We have lost the 1965 Voter Rights Act when the U.S. Supreme Court in June of 2013 gutted Section 4 and Section 5. It was gutted, which gave us the protection of the federal government. We don't have that protection. You hear suppressing of the vote. That's why you got a suppressing of the vote. You know why? You're going back to state rights. You're going back to Jim Crow. And ain't nobody talking about it.
Nobody.
When you had here in Georgia, the problems and the confusion and with the voting machines and all, people wasn't trained. They didn't know what they were doing. They eliminated some of the precincts and voting polls, places like that. That's because you had no protection from the federal government. Department of Justice have to pre-clear any changes before Section 4 and Section 5 was gutted. They would have to pre-clear any changes that any state made. And we lost that.
Right.
And nobody said a word.
Nobody said anything. Hush mouth about it.
Yes.
Yeah, which leads us to like with voting rights and stuff, like our police officers, and not only the president. People only think about the president, but we got to think about our police officers that's being voted in, our city officials, which starts at the level 1. So which I know it's been going on before the 90s, but you know, in my generation, Rodney King was like one of the first serious things that happened.
Rodney King.
Yes.
Now, Rodney King made one of the most profound statements. Most folks didn't get it. He said, in a few words, why can't we just all get along?
Yes.
Woo!
In the midst of what happened to him. Yes. I said in the midst of what happened to him.
In the midst of what happened to him.
Yes.
In the midst of what happened to him. That's reconciliation. That's number 6.
Yes.
Why can't we all just get along? Woo! It stuck with me.
Yes.
And that is an example of people who's involved in a lot of these protests. The leaders should know who they are. Too many people have hidden agendas. You got to follow the leader. If you don't follow the leader who orchestrating this march, and the leader got to be trained.
Exactly. Exactly.
You got too many folks saying, I'm the leader, follow me, let's march, and have no background in training. That's just like getting your license to drive and you haven't been trained to drive, or you didn't pass the test. You got to pass the test to be a leader.
Right. Then it's
and the
just like,
test is, what have you done before today and you leading them on?
exactly.
Have you ever been successful on anything that's dealing with people? And we got too many people who don't even like folks, and they try to be people in leadership positions, trying to be concerned about others when you have never demonstrated that you love people. I don't follow nobody if they don't have a record. It can be a prison record. I did not know you. It could be a community record in what you have done. Then I know you. It could be a business record that you're successful in closing deals and you can bring resources. See, the movement needs money. We need business people. We don't need them to lead the march, but they need to support the campaign. It's just like running for office. It's just like having the army without a budget. The civil rights movement has to have a budget. You don't just march without a budget.
Right, yeah.
One thing my dad always told me, don't follow nobody that can't buy you a dinner. You understand what I'm saying? A leader has to pay for things that other folks can't pay for.
Then it's like the blind leading the blind.
Blind leading the blind. That's right. You can't lead if you don't have resources where you've been successful in business, where you've been successful in whatever your occupation is. And you have saved up resources where I can say, hey man, I saw a lady in the line the other day short of paying for something at a major store. And I had counted it up in my mind that it shouldn't be more than $20 some odd because I'm a person who living from check to check as well. But I do save. And I found out it was like $20 some odd. And the lady would walk back to her car. I told the cashier, no ma'am, that's them dry bones. You have to talk to them dry bones. I'm giving and not receiving. But God gonna take care of me along the way. So I paid for it. I paid for it. So that's what we have to do. How many people would pay for other folks' bills when God has blessed them to be able to do it without hurting yourself? I'm not saying not to take care of your responsibility first. You have to do that. But after you take care of your responsibility, then you help others.
Right. And in the midst of later years, like now, with our George Floyds and our Philando Castiles and our Breonna Taylors and Trayvon Martins, what stuck with you about Jacob Blake to make you just dig deep in there and just have to go down there to Wisconsin?
Well, you can't totally commit yourself to everybody, and you can't please everybody at the same time, but you can contribute. I've contributed to all those situations one way or another, financially, prayerfully. I know most of the mothers of those names that you just called, Eric Gardner and all of them, you know, because I'm on the scene and I travel all over the world. What really got me in terms of Jacob Blake was the fact that I had a mutual friend that knew Mr. Blake, his father. And he said, Charles, this is a situation I know where you can really help this family. Because Mr. Blake himself would tell you that he has a big family. And he lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. And they're not leaving he's not leaving his son, and his son's siblings are not leaving him either. It's changing not only the young man who was shot 7 times, Jacob Blake, not only changing his fabrication of his daily life, it's changing the whole family. So he got my mutual friend called, Mr. Blake told him that Charles Steele, SCLC president, want to help you. Mr. Blake told him, I grew up with SCLC and the Black Panthers. I had both. He said, my father was the president in Evanston, Illinois. For many of years, he followed Dr. King. Yes, I want to be a part of what Steele can bring to the table. So that instantaneously brought us together in terms of the spirit of SCLC and the movement. I flew up to Milwaukee because they stay in a facility right outside of Milwaukee, Kenosha, right down the street. But I flew into Milwaukee, went over to the hotel, and we had a great conversation. Met several members of the family, and just to talk to the daddy, Mr. Blake, just to talk to him is so inspirational. He played football. He went to Winston-Salem State University, HBCU school, Historical Black College University, and they raised an astronomical amount of money to help the family, primarily the children, his grandchildren. They're gonna need help the rest of their life.
Exactly.
Their father is paralyzed from the waist down. No more vertebrae in his body. No more spinal cord to stand and to move. He's going to be paralyzed the rest of his life. And he has responsibilities. He has 3 children. And then not to think about the siblings who are going to be there to aid him. What he needs now, more than anything, is the institution of the family. So the family got to be there to lift him up so he won't just give in and give out.
Exactly.
So this is what got me in a position. They're going to be ongoing opportunities to help this family.
Yeah. Because
after the cameras leave and after the speeches and the talking, we want to be there for the family.
Right. Because
that's what brought us together. And we shook on it, and we committed to it. And Mr. Blake said, "Thank God for you for coming," because there are other organizations doing things too. We just wanted to carve out a niche, what we can do, so we all can what? Collaborate.
Yes, collaborate, collect.
That's what we're missing as a community. The word is collaboration. Yes. And that's how we involve, and we're gonna stay involved.
Oh, okay, that's great. So finally, because I know you have to do some things, how do you think, being a civil rights veteran, do you think voting helps that, or what can we do as a people to
start over? I didn't hear your full question.
Oh, as a civil rights veteran, how do you think we can help that? Like, do you think it's voting that helps that, or how do we step in and try to help these things not happen so much?
All of the above, and including the Steele plan, which God has put on me.
All right.
I want to bring something to your attention. Please. We depend too much on politics. You know, you got politics is turning to be more of a Hollywood type thing. We got rising stars. Rising stars. I mean, you elected to represent the people.
Exactly.
It ain't about being no star. You know, get your hand dirty. You know, get out there and dig some ditches in order to help build a house and bring the mud back and the gravel back from the gravel pit so we can put it out, you know, in the driveway because we can't afford the asphalt and the cement. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
So that's grassroots. Politics has never freed African Americans, Black folks. We must free politics. Amen. Let me give you an example. When A. Philip Randolph was in office as president, and I think he'd done some great thing with the New Deal and all of that. But A. Philip Randolph went to him and said, "Mr. President, we're tired of being second-class citizens. We're tired of going to the outhouses and the poor houses and don't have anything to eat. And we can't sit in the front of the bus. If we can ride the bus, we have to go to the back. You don't even get on the bus in the front. You get on in the back." And he continued, "Mr. President, we want to be first-class citizens." And after so many minutes, FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, looked up at A. Philip Randolph, who was representing the poor car porters on the train, Blacks. He was president of the union. And the poor porters. So A. Philip Randolph said, "What can you do, Mr. President? Because I want to have a march." Now, FDR was afraid to have that march. It ended up being 1963 when the march came about. He and Dr. King got together with the Big Four, the Big Six. But the point being is that FDR took a long pull off his cigar and he looked up at it. He said, Philip, I believe in everything that you said. Y'all should not be under Jim Crow. You should not be drinking from a colored water fountain that's hot, and white folks got white water fountain that's cold, and so on and so on. He said, I agree with everything you said, but you do me a favor, my friend. You make me do it. Woo!
Right. Exactly. Then we'll see what's happening.
Make me do it. Yes. Even though he was the president, he couldn't just go do it without a reason. Mm-hmm. Hello? Mm-hmm. And a decent reason, a mm-hmm. respectful reason. We love you, we're going to respect you, but we're going to march on you. When you see 1 million folks down there in that street, non-violently,
right?
You playing into the enemy hand when you go out there being destructive, being violent. He got all the guns and the ammunition. You ain't got nothing but a little pop gun.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
He got the whole army. Let me say this in closing. Dr. King said the 3 ills in society. I hope somebody who's listening to us will write this down. The 3 ills in society happens to be racism, mm-hmm. poverty, mm-hmm. and militaristic. Mm-hmm. The military. You see how the law enforcement either be in the army that the president used when he wanted to have a photo op at a church, in front of a church.
Yes.
He went and got the army and sprayed the bullets, rubber bullets and
right.
and spray guns and all of that on the people to get a photo op, but he had the military.
For a photo op.
Okay. Law enforcement. That's the military. Racism, poverty. We got to get out of poverty. Mm-hmm. Racism, poverty, and the military. The Homestead Act of 1862 said that we're going to help people get on their feet, the government, the federal government. Yeah. And you cannot be of the Negroid race. You can't be a domestic worker. Mm-hmm. You cannot be a farmer. They gave it to white folks.
That's what it meant, exactly.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
It ain't nothing changed. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Read the book, The Color of Law.
The Color of Law.
By Richard Rothstein. It tells the conspiracy of this country. It was founded upon white supremacy. Discrimination was in the plan. Segregation, it was all in the plan. It was to put you over here in a corner in housing. And the plan was, we'll give real estate developers a bonus if they don't let no Negroes in the suburbs. Hello, somebody.
Exactly.
This is historically and presently being done.
Yep.
So you got to know your history. Wisdom. Where does wisdom come from? Showing you where a lot of our young folks missing the boat on this. And I love young folks. They love me. And I talk to them, but I got to educate them.
They please do.
Where does wisdom come from? All wisdom comes from God, number one. Mm-hmm. But God also allows us to get some wisdom through our experiences. Mm-hmm. See, when you're growing up, they didn't teach that in school because they didn't know. You can't teach what you don't know.
Exactly.
And they had a script to go by. Mm-hmm. They couldn't teach you to be a civil rights leader. When Dr. King came around to most cities and schools, the principal shut down and nailed down the window so the kids couldn't jump out. Mm-hmm. Because they couldn't do it. Because they had a job to do. But in the back of their minds, and they saw you in the corner, boy, I can't support this, but you go and join that march. Mm-hmm. Go join that march. But the system would have fired the principal and the teachers. But they did it in Selma. Selma said the heck with it.
Right.
Reverend Reese was the president of the Teachers Association in Selma. He told all the teachers, we gonna join this march, the right to vote. So that's where we are. Wisdom, again, I got a lot of it. A lot of other folks got it. But we have maturated to maturity. Mm-hmm. You don't get this giving a speech and leading a march.
Right.
You got to go through something. I've been to jail. I've been sleeping in my car. Never done anything to hurt nobody. Went to jail protesting for poor people and black folks when they're being discriminated against. And I asked a question. I didn't have a gun. Why should I? I asked the question, why should I have been violent? I stayed in jail and didn't have nothing to eat but once a day. Couldn't take a shower because there wasn't no shower.
Mm-hmm.
I'd given up opportunities that I could have had a job, but I chose to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I educated my daughters. One is getting married next month. One been married for 15 years. They finished college. My wife never left me. Tomorrow will be 43 years we've been married.
Right. Congratulations.
Folks said, when you gonna leave him? She said, I'm getting closer. Oh, he's crazy. He's fighting for other folks.
Fighting for other people. Hey, look, I want to say from me to you, thank you for your focus and your purpose.
Thank you so much for having me.
There will be no me without you.
That's right. That's right. And we have to continue to fight. But don't make the mistakes, young folks, of not being taught and not being in an osmosis situation. This stuff is contagious.
Mm-hmm.
If you're around it, and this is very important, know when to shut up and listen.
Mm-hmm.
See, what a lot of folks didn't know about Dr. King, he was very great and a great orator, he charismatic, very great, gifted with that. But guess what? Dr. King was a great listener too.
All right.
He listened.
Mm-hmm.
He sit around with 40, 50 of his staff members, and they'd just be beating up on him and saying, why should we do this? Why should we? And he listened for hours. Listen, everybody concerned. You got to listen. And then at the end of the last attack, he would get up and say, I've heard you all, and I've taken it to heart. But this is what we're going to do.
So he knew how
to listen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. One more thing. Let me just ask, I would be remiss if I didn't talk to you about this. I've had the great honor of meeting and sitting and talking with Reverend C.T. Vivian.
Yes, sir.
He's the funniest man on the earth. He's a comedian.
Man.
Nobody he'll talk you to death.
And he can't talk. I mean, he could talk. He's still talking up in heaven.
Exactly. I hear him laugh now, and I hear you and him were very close from teenagers to adulthood.
Well, I'm 74 years of age, and he died at 95. Mm-hmm. But C.T. Vivian came to my hometown in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and led a march with Reverend T.Y. Roger. He trained us. I was no more than 16 years old. And that's when the spirit of the civil rights got into me. We was integrating a courthouse downtown, a brand new courthouse that we couldn't go in. Or if we went in, we had to go to the back door in the bottom floor. But C.T. Vivian was there training us in nonviolent approaches in First African Baptist Church. You're going to tell me we don't need the church and we don't need God?
Right.
That's what got us here and going to keep us here if you don't forget.
Yes.
C.T. Vivian was some kind of individual. And he could have a laugh that could just set you on fire. And Dr. King called him the greatest preacher in the world.
Wow.
He could say the word. Yes, sir. Wow. And had something to say. And I'm honored to say that when I came back to SCLC, I took a sabbatical for 3 years. CT and I was next door to each other with our offices. And I'll go in there for a minute to ask him a question, and I end up staying 5 hours because he had so many stories.
I could see that.
I was listening. Mm-hmm. And Charles, I was over in this prison, over in this state. And even in Illinois, when I was a young man, teenager, I boycotted the library because they wouldn't let black folks in. Oh, man, story after story. Yeah. So young people, listen to the stories. Yeah. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. I go all over the world. Mikhail Gorbachev knocked down the Berlin Wall in 1989 as president of Russia. He invited me to the 25th commemoration of the fall of the Berlin Wall. I was at one head of the table, President Gorbachev at the other. I was the only American invited.
Wow.
That was 2014.
Mm-hmm.
In 25 countries in the middle. And they all spoke different languages. And they asked President Gorbachev, said, what language are we going to speak in today? He said, well, we got Steele here from Atlanta. We're going to speak in English.
English.
I can't speak nothing but English.
Right.
A little Ebonic every now and then.
Exactly. Wow.
But that's my experience all over the world, meeting with heads of states, world leaders, and they all tell me, don't quit, Steele.
Exactly.
Because if you quit, we can give it up. We follow the lead of SCLC and the pioneers of the civil rights movement. Yeah. You can't get that kind of respect being violent.
You can't.
I was also invited by Prime Minister Ariel Sharon of Israel before he died 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. President Ariel Sharon invited me to Jerusalem. He said, Steele, the reason I invited you was that we know y'all the chosen one. Hello. Our people don't realize we are the chosen ones, what we've been through. Yes. But you got to know your history. And it was God that led us. It was God that directed us. It was God that gave us Dr. King. It was God that gave us SCLC as a spiritual vehicle to take us to freedom. Every rights and civil actions that we had to free our people, with the exception of Brown versus Board of Education 1954, came from SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference.
Yes.
And I rest my case.
And it was God that has given us you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
And I love you, and I love you, and thank you for my life.
Thank you. We love you. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
One thing about it, I'm going to tell the truth.
Oh, yes, and I love it.
Thank you so much.
When we get out of this epidemic, I'm going to come sit with you.
Please, travel with me.
Yes.
I'm all over the world.
Yes.
We have offices, glad you said that. We have offices in Paris, France. We have offices in Moscow, Russia. We have offices in Torino, Italy. And I travel all these places. I just set up an office in not Berlin. We do have an office in Berlin, Germany, but I just set up an office in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and Sao Paulo. We have offices there. We have offices all over the world. And people love SCLC because of what we stand for. I'll say this in closing. The three most influential people that had some impact on me, nobody else, me, that keep me going. First, that walked this planet called Earth, Jesus Christ, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and Mikhail Gorbachev. Mikhail Gorbachev dismantled communism in Russia, in the Soviet Union. He broke it up, knocked down that wall. And I asked him the question when I was in Moscow. I said, Mr. President, Mr. Gorbachev, President Gorbachev, what gave you the courage to knock down that wall? Because that's dismantling communism at the root, coming out of Russia and the Soviet Union. He said, Steele, that was 1989. See, this is what you get when you travel.
Yes.
3 ways to get educated other than the traditional way. Read, travel, and build relationships. 3 ways to get educated.
Amen.
Okay? I said, what gave you the courage to knock that wall down? He said, Steele, the wall came down in 1989. He said, but in 1964, that's the year I finished high school, 1964, I heard Dr. Martin Luther King speak. Woo! In East Berlin, Germany.
Wow.
Come on now, come on. Ain't that heavy?
No, that is heavy. Wow.
He said, I heard Dr. King speak. And Dr. King said, I'm getting excited and spiritual now. And Dr. King said, no man built wall can separate God from his children.
Amen.
Lord, and I looked at him. He speaks no English through his interpreter. I looked at him in his office. I said, Mr. Gorbachev, former president of Russia, the Soviet Union. I always thought that you was an atheist. Are you telling me you a Christian? He said, I'm telling you, I was almost persuaded. What am I saying? The impact of the civil rights movement and in the spirit of Dr. King, who was anointed by God. And you're going to tell me we need to stop kneeling and praying and get up out here and just raise sand? No.
Right.
It's God.
It's God.
And you got to have him in you. Well, thank you so much. I got caught up. I didn't mean to go that far.
Hey, you all right with me. I love it. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
You
too. You the most important one. Because you're going to take this baton and take it from me and lead it.
I'm going to lead it. I'm going to lead it.
Okay.
And I'm going to use the 6 principles when I'm doing that.
Please.
Yes.
That's very important.
Yes.
And we teach that all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Lafayette was teaching it, my chairman of the board, who worked with Dr. King. He was teaching it in Nigeria about 3 or 4 years ago. They were getting ready to have a revolt. And the rebels that were trying to overtake the country of Nigeria put down their weapons, because he got the leaders that was creating the revolt in the problem at that time, got them for a week in a room together, and he trained them on those 6 principles. Save the revolt. Yeah. Hello, I'm Charles Steele Jr., President and CEO of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC. You are watching with Cutty, the great program that I always pay attention to, and hopefully we'll be back.